Okay, is everything fine? Let me double check. Let me see. Hello? Hopefully everyone can hear me. I do believe so. Yeah, okay. So, hello everyone. Nintendo knows you back once again. Hopefully you all have been having a good week. Hopefully not as busy as I am, honestly. It's been a little busy for me almost every day. Having so many appointments one after another, and you know, just living, also doing college at the same time, and all that, fun stuff. So been a little busy myself. But yeah. So yeah, hopefully y'all's week has been good again. Today, what was I going to talk? Let's talk about. I do have a couple of updates before I do start. Like for example, I actually did well. If you saw my last stream, which was I believe when I played Tetris Effect, I talked a little bit about my travel. I obviously, even if you follow my social media, I did kind of share a little bit about how the process does and all that good stuff. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out, definitely do check it out. It did kind of give me like a little bit of some updates in terms of like my eye health, if you're interested. But I mean, besides that, I mean, that was about it for that stream on Monday. I just played Tetris Effect, which I think that's when I kind of got a couple of likes on, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you for that. I do appreciate it. But yeah, so after that, it's been kind of quiet. I did have like some appointments, like I mentioned, like yesterday. Well, no, yesterday I was supposed to actually leave for like two appointments, but one of them got canceled, and I had to have one like this morning, over the phone instead. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be one of those types that ends the week, huh? No, but yeah. So basically, what I just so I guess like I mentioned, a little bit of updates. I did, for those who've been following my nursing journey, I kind of did, I guess, get some good feedback regarding like the trying to get into one university, my first university into the nursing program. So I kind of like got like I spoke with someone kind of like that deals with, like, for example, people with disabilities, from the university or campus itself. And I kind of got advised like what to do. Although I, it's kind of like still they kind of gave me like this general feedback, but and the thing is, and I don't want to take this too long. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I mean, even though they kind of gave me the right department to speak with about like the issue and what happened, I kind of still sense like, because I mean the person who kind of like just I guess like counsels people or helps people with disabilities, yeah, they kind of were like, I don't want to say like doing the same thing as what the was it the chairman of the nursing program did, but I mean they kind of be like in the general, and I mean they have to like explain like the standards, and I mean, which I understand. I mean, again, you can only like explain so much and be supportive so much. However, I mean, besides, I got the right department, so I probably will be talking with them about it. Now, obviously, I don't mean I'm not trying to complain about it or anything like that. No, it's just that I want people to at least be educated that that there's so many people out there with disabilities that what they're doing things that many people think that they can't do. Um, and that's one thing I just want to try and accomplish. I mean, I like I said, I don't want to start complaints, and because I mean, the department that they kind of led me to was like almost like a complaint department, but looking at the online form, I saw like the application, like, do you want to like actually like do an investigation, or like do just like to educate them, or like to or some other like options out there. But I mean, my main thing is just to kind of educate them, because I mean, again, not that many people know that there's like so many opportunities out there for people with disabilities. So that is my main goal, to kind of reach with people. But yeah, so I do want to actually, so I'm probably going to continue with that, at least just to see what happens. And I guess also like another, that actually kind of goes into my update. I kind of found out recently that the second university college, again, interchange the words between them. Um, I kind of found out that even though if I did, like, for example, like the entrance exam, which is called the HESTI, and regarding the what is it, like the one class before you can even apply into the program, even if I do that, I really couldn't even join this coming spring's semester. Even if I did that, well, it wouldn't even be possible to fill out the application. Um, so basically, for now, and so I mean, yeah, so I mean, basically, for even if I went both ways, it's still gonna have to probably be until next fall of 2020. Which, it's a bummer. I understand that. um, but I mean, yeah, it is what it is, and you know what? I mean, even though I'm like at this point where it's like, you know, I just want to start, you know, I just want to do my profession already. But, you know, I mean, this is where I'm at, you know, so I'll see how that goes. Um, but, I mean, again, also, you know, everything happens for a reason. Time only, you know, time can only tell what happens, and you know what? I do, you know, I do believe that, you know, things are happening like this for a reason, and that's why I'll always keep believing in that positivity, in other words. And you know what? I mean, even if I am delayed by a couple of years, I mean, which I'm already kind of delayed in a way, but again, even if it takes like another 3 years, that's fine. You know what? It's worth the wait. Um, but yeah. So, I mean, yeah, so basically for now, the only thing I'm going to focus on is the test that I'm going to be taking actually on the 14th, I believe. Um, but yeah, that was this month on the 14th, I will be taking the exam, and hopefully we'll see how I do. Which kind of brings me to my last update before I actually begin, you know, this week's discussion. This week's abnormal psychology discussion. Because I'm having like tests also like in general next week, next Friday, and also because of like the HESI exam is on not this coming Monday but the following Monday, which is the 14th. I probably will be delaying the at next week's abnormal psychology video, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe because I do have my actually I don't wanna I do have my textbook right here. I think the next one I will be covering is actually do want to make sure I got the right lesson, well the right chapter that I'm gonna be doing next. I think next week is actually going to be eating disorders. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, next week we're gonna be doing eating disorders. Which I mean, it's kind. I mean, it's you know a bit interesting one as well. But unfortunately, yeah, I'd rather focus like on the studying, and you know, obviously just doing the test. You know, focus on the tests. So yeah, that will be probably delayed not next week, but the following week after I do the history exam. So I guess expect two abnormal psychology videos on the week of the 14th, just so that I cover you know next week's and then the following that you know that week that same week's abnormal psychology topic. But yeah, so yeah, I do believe that's about it in terms of the updates. Um, oh, um, but yeah, so yeah, if abnormal psychology is gonna be delayed for next week's, um, I will at least do a gaming stream. Now I do have several games in mind, which actually today I'm gonna be doing another stream, which is a gaming one because it's a Friday. Um, but again, which I'll explain. I'll explain more when I do like the game stream later today. But yeah. So I will be doing at least a gaming stream next week. Just maybe one, two if I can. But again, because of the testing, I mean the studying and all that stuff, I'm not too sure about that yet. But definitely at least one stream next week in terms of gaming. But yeah. So with all that being said, I do believe that's a bit in terms of the updates. I was kind of like also like write little notes on my phone just to make sure I kind of like know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think that's about it in terms of updates. So anyway, this week's abnormal psychology topic. This week is actually pretty interesting because we're kind of still dealing with like a lot of you know, because I mean obviously stress can cause anxiety. However, this week, since I already talked about anxiety last week, we're going to be kind of focusing on stress itself. You know, because those disorders related to stress. If you don't know, um, but yeah. So this week's discussions is like you know disorders of this trauma and stress, and yeah. So let's get started on that. So, what is stress? So first off, stress is actually something we need. Now, it may sound weird at first, but actually it is kind of a necessary part of for us to have at least some form of stress, you know, every so often or, you know, almost frequently you can say, but just like, you know, like a tiny, like little bursts of stress. Because yeah, for example, stress kind of stimulates our fight or flight response. And the fight or flight response kind of helps us, either, obviously like the name suggests, it helps us fight or helps us like, you know, get away from dangerous situations that we don't need to be around in. um, but yeah, it does help us with that, and that is something why stress is an essential. And because of that, we it helps also, like, our endocrine system, which is the system that helps regulate our hormones, and um, tries and regulates basically all our body functions. And even the nervous system helps us, the stress helps us regulate that as well. Now, yeah, so I mean, the fight or flight response is something essential for our everyday lives. But what happens that um, if that fight or flight response becomes a bit more worse, or a bit too severe? What can happen if we develop too much stress? What happens if we get too much of those hormones, or too much of those you know other uh, body factors, biological factors? And what happens, or what if we experience something traumatic that affects us psychologically? Well, that is where the stress disorders come into play. So the first one that we'll be talk so the first one I'll talk about is something called um, acute stress disorders. Um, so yeah, acute stress disorders is basically a disorder where people tend to have, like, lots, like, episodes of, like, you know full of emotions. Like, for example, they tend to always be, because I mean, acute stress. Wait, I'm sorry. Acute stress disorder is basically like from an unfortunate event that happened, and I mean, I'll get into those, like common events, or common things that trigger acute stress disorder in a bit. But those things can actually be, I mean, yeah, several traumatic events can cause acute um I'm sorry, acute stress disorder. I'm sorry, it's because I'm actually um trying to look at my book at the same time, and, like, at the same time, I don't want to, like, so I apologize for that. But yeah, acute stress disorder is one of those disorders that, yeah, it can happen from a traumatic event. Now, how is it different? Now, well, first off, when you have acute stress disorder, or even PTSD, which, I mean, I guess it kind of integrates within two. The main differences between acute stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder is the time frame. So if the person has symptoms of acute stress disorder for, like, within a month, but that's it, it would be considered that acute stress disorder. Now, if they have it more than a month, then that is where it will be, what is it, post traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD for sure. I'll go by that. Um, so PTSD, for example, is different. Sorry, different. So different symptoms can arise from both acute and stress PTSD. For example, a person can actually have, I'm sorry, they can have so many negative emotions about themselves, and you kind of see this a lot. I guess you could say, like, in the television. Well, no, I don't want to relate to television, because this is actually, like, real life. Sorry, bad example right there. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously, they can have, like, really negative moods towards themselves, or even others in general at times. They can even feel, guilt, self guilt, because of, like, the situation they experienced, or witnessed. Which, I mean, yeah, it just, like, makes them feel bad about themselves in general. And it can, like, if it does, like, stay that long, they can have, like, other additional uh, abnormal psychological conditions, like depression, even maybe GAD, like last week, generalized anxiety disorder. But again, it just depends how severe all that is. But I'll go in more detail on that. So, and basically, like, another symptom will be, like, referencing the traumatic event. So it's like they always keep thinking about it. It'll always be, like, in the back of the mind. They'll always be you know thinking about it almost every day, like how they what they witnessed, what they experienced, and what they saw from their own experience. um and that's kind of, like, also, like, what triggers, like, the bad moods, all the the several emotions and um, guilt towards themselves because they witnessed that. So because of that, they think about also the event that took place. Several many times throughout the day, and it can last for a while. Now another thing is that they can have avoidance. Now avoidance is like, I don't want to say it's like a what is it, a phobia, but it is more like a new fear that they develop because of what they witness or what they saw. So for an example, if someone developed acute stress disorder or PTSD from a car accident, while yes they will be thinking of that car accident frequently because of of the symptoms of PTSD and acute stress disorder, um, they even though they have constant thoughts about it, that doesn't mean that that they will actually continue doing what they want to do. So if a person's in a car crash, yes, they'll be thinking about that car crash, but they'll avoid any. They'll most likely avoid any activities related to cars. Like they won't like use cars anymore to drive, or they won't use to get anywhere. Or they could probably avoid transportation altogether once. But that's more of a general example of what of avoidance within people who have acute stress disorder or PTSD. And then another type of what is it symptom that can happen is, and I'm sorry, let me look at my book. It is reduce. Okay. Oh yes. So basically, what another symptom is that they kind of like tend they kind of get away from society, and which is kind of called dissociation. Dissociation from others. From people, from places. They're kind of like in their own little world, you can say. Where they don't interact with people that much. They really are, just they feel left out. They feel like out of reality. It's like they're in their own bubble, their own little mind. And the reason why they feel that is because of the traumatic thing that they witnessed, or any stress that can that has triggered them to feel like that. And it isn't, I mean, yeah. So they find they're kind of like away from society from that much. So they kind of dissociate away from them and just tend to be themselves for a while because they feel they can't function within people or within regular society that much anymore. So they tend to hide it with avoidance, and being dissociative towards themselves. So yeah, that's what makes them, like, I guess, stuck in that own perspective of they're in their own little world or their own little place. But yeah, that is another symptom of that. And again, it just depends on, for example, the traumatic event. They can either have acute stress disorder, which is a month, or if it's longer than that, it'll be post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, but yeah, so I mean, those are kind of like the common symptoms, that you would see with people with, any of those two disorders. Now, there are several reasons why they can develop both, or I mean, they can develop either or. Now, obviously, one thing that's common is trauma, like I mentioned earlier. So trauma. Now, the thing is with PTSD, one of the most common things you could probably think of is the military. And the military, the reason why it's common is because a lot of military people actually go through this. I'm not saying everyone, obviously, but it's a good amount that unfortunately do kind of have that um, thing, psychological disorder after coming from military battle or whatever they were fighting for. But yeah, so basically combat in military, it will trigger PTSD or acute stress disorder. I guess I'll call it ASD from now on, just so that way it'll be a little more simple. But yeah, so, and the reason why they kind of feel that is because obviously of what they witness. I mean, they're fighting for their lives, they're fighting for the country, they're fighting for so many things. So obviously it is kind of like a traumatic experience, just going through that, because I mean, you see so much stuff that, you know what, it's pretty much life or death at that point. And, you know, I mean, it's really, you know, it's really, it can be really traumatic for them, you know, because they don't know what to expect when going through all that. I'm sure they can try to be mentally prepared, but even like that, when they go in, it's a whole completely different story. Um, so I mean, yeah, so it's combat is one of the common ways why people, you know, or I guess why people develop ASD or PTSD. But that's not actually the only thing. Now, another one is actually disasters and accidents. Now, when you think of disasters, when you think of accidents, you probably think like car accidents. When you think, oh, you know, what's another one? I guess like a plane crash, which I mean, those don't happen either way that much. But again, as an example, or maybe even a serious medical condition, it can actually, like a medical injury. Basically, yeah, any medical injury can actually cause, you know, also PTSD or several different types of you know, it can cause, you know, acute ASD or PTSD. Now, not only, you know, accidents can cause that, but also, you know, disasters, natural disasters. So when you think of natural disasters, yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you know, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes. What else is there? There's like heat waves. There's, you know, I think I mentioned floods already. You know, all those common, you know, natural disasters that can happen basically around the world, anywhere, anytime. Um, but yeah, that is one thing. There's another, you know, reason why, because I mean, when they go through that, again, they don't know what they're seeing, so it can be really traumatic for them, because, you know, they could, you know, lose their valuables, they could lose a lost one. We don't really know when it comes to like those type of disasters or traumas. People really don't know what to expect, and that's why when it hits them real hard, and that's how they develop ASD or PTSD. But now, another one that is, I'm sorry, I'm gonna look at it real quick. It'll be victimization. Now, this one, it is a bit sensitive, I'll admit, and if I'm actually correct, I do believe it is what I'm thinking it is. Yeah, it is what it is. Okay, so this one is a bit. This cause is a bit more. How do I put this? A bit more sensitive. So people who are victimization, it's basically when you refer victimization, it basically refers to like rape, sexual abuse, sexual assault. You know, all that, you know, unfortunate stuff. Um, and obviously, one common thing is that, you know, it happens to more women than men, because of that. You know, but and I want to make sure actually I get everything right. So yeah, so basically anyone can have. I think I'm actually on the. Hopefully I got everything right. I know I did make sure I kind of read everything. Okay, so yeah, so yeah, basically it's anyone who actually gets raped. You know, domestic abuse, violence. You know, towards like relationships, sexual assault. You know, those kind, and obviously that can develop into PTSD or ASD because of what they experience and what they you know I mean, I guess you could say suffer because of that traumatic event. And also, I actually just thought of this right now. Another one is actually unconsensual sex, um, which I mean, yeah, that's also another thing. So to you know. But yeah, that is another one that people, you know, do face, you know, when they do that. Um, Now, while yes, it is, you know, common among women, men can also get it. You know, it's not as high of a you know, high number than what, you know, you know, women will get, but you know, it's still possible for men to, you know, even develop PTSD or ASD from sexual, you know, abuse or rape or, you know, domestic violence, all those, you know, causes of that. Um, Now another one that is, you know, now moving on, another one that is common is another traumatic event is terrorism. So when you think of terrorism, think about 9/11. when 9/11 happened, the whole U.S. Shook, and many people they kind of lost their lives because of it, and it was a real shocking thing to experience. Um, and with because of 9/11, many families died. Many what is it employees, firefighters, response teams, firefighters, police, EMTs, all of that. They it really shook the whole U.S. that day on September 11th. I'm sorry, everyone. Um, yeah. So, yeah. So 9/11 is like one example of a terrorism attack, and from terrorism attacks, people can also develop PTSD because they're losing. Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Because they lose. They see. Horrific. Things happening like 9/11. The planes crashed into the Twin Towers in New York. And from there, many lives were lost, and it really was a traumatic experience for everyone. So I mean, I think about that. Think about like even I guess even more recent happenings. Think about like the some of the mass shootings that have happened that can also cause PTSD or ASD. Um, I don't think there's any other like good examples I can think of. But yeah, basically any like form of violence. That seems like a terroristic or even I guess like a general attack on on like a certain group. That's obviously terrorism, and that can also cause PTSD or ASD. Now, one other one that is actually I'm actually looking at one more. One other one is I can think of is torture. Now, this one's a bit different. Torture is not really. It's kind of something not surprised to hear about, but I am actually a bit curious as to because I really don't see like how we can go through torture every day, um, unless for example like if you're I guess a prisoner, or if you're in like in a abusive relationship that is a I guess you could say torture, that they can torture you from that, but um, kind of I guess like go into like different kinds of torture. There is many psychological torture where you don't get enough sleep, you don't get you don't get no socialization with anyone. There's sometimes physical torture, which is where you get hit, you get even like what is it like burn, even fire, you're hanged, all those unfortunate physical tortures. There's even one that's actually called, which I wasn't even aware of, but it's sexual torture, and with those, but that I mean just by the name implies it's like physical or physical psychological harm towards our sexual organs and body systems, um, and that obviously it does play effect in your mind. It can really affect your everyday life. And going through that repeatedly, of course, you're gonna have some kind of traumatic remembrance of it because it will definitely play a toll on your life. But yeah, torture is definitely another common reason why people will have PTSD or ASD. Although again, I guess I did find it a bit interesting since I'm not really aware of like how I guess torture can happen like on almost on an everyday basis. Unlike the other ones, because I mean like sexual, like rape. I mean obviously that can happen with anyone. Um, I mean that's like if you think of torture, maybe if you like kidnapped as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. That one just found that last one is actually a bit interesting to me. But I mean it's true. It's true of what it says. Torture can be a traumatic event to even experience, but just how it develops I honestly or like how it can happen I can't really think of the many examples of how it can actually happen when it comes to torture. But anyway, so up to this point I've kind of talked about traumatic events. Now these traumatic events can obviously cause PTSD or ASD. However, what if traumatic events are not the only things that associate these stress disorders. Now, again, like I mentioned, stress itself is definitely something that we need. Um, However, there can be other factors that can contribute to stress, and and when combined with these traumatic events in total, well, obviously it gets even worse for the for the person who's experiencing that. So so kind of stepping also like so moving forward from traumatic events, now we're kind of going to like the actual other causes why PTSD or ASD can happen. And one thing again is like how our brains function. For example, we have the fight or flight response, but what if that fight or flight response like is overactive, or our nervous system tends to just get excited, just be like stressed out, over everything, from for a period of time. So I just need to check something real quick. Okay, no. I'm sorry. It's because even though I have like my opponents, even though I kind of like it's my free day, I still have some stuff to check and all that stuff. But anyway, so yeah, so basically anything like within our brain, it's possible like an abnormality within our brain can happen and cause PTSD or ASD. It's not it's not. I mean, it is a bit uncommon, but it does happen. Um, and yeah, so adding that with a traumatic event, it can contribute to even worse type of PTSD or ASD. Now another one, and I'm sorry. Sorry. I mean, yeah. Basically, also, another going a little more specific is the brain circuit, and the brain circuit again, that's kind of where it controls our stress. Now, again, if the brain circuit is overhyped or over stimulated, and if it doesn't like calm down over a period of time, then that's where PTSD or ASD comes into play. Now another one is inherit, like, so it may sound like a bit strange to kind of think about this, but people can also get PTSD or ASD from like genetics. And another is, it is a little bit rare, but people can get it from from genetics, from family members, or in other words, it doesn't mean that they will have it, but they are more than likely to get it if a person has already been through that before. Um, but yeah, I mean, genetics is also one important factor into play if a person is to develop PTSD or ASD. That's something to also think about. So another one is actually childhood experiences. Now, obviously, with children, it's a little bit different because the minds have not fully developed, and because that they haven't fully developed yet, when they experience things, especially within traumatic, or I guess like even like best things in general, like even like the best things, like the best days of their lives, all that good stuff, all the good and bad stuff. Sometimes combining the both, um, they will always like remember it within probably the rest of their lives. Like me, for instance, I can remember, I can recall several good things, when I was a child. And I always recall back them, but of course, like for people who have like negative experiences, that can also, from that, it may not hurt them then, but it will hurt them as adults. And well, that's more like a long term type of cause of PTSD or ASD. It is still possible for that to even happen. Um, if a child does experience any sort of trauma or horrific experience that they really should not have been in the first place. Um, and then so yeah, that is trauma. I mean, that is child experiences. And then another one is actually I'm trying to look here. So basically, personal styles. So when you think of personal styles, it's more of like how people, you can say, live. Like how they relate. Well, no, I'm sorry. I think I may have actually gotten that wrong on that one. No, this is actually how. No, this is not what I'm thinking about. Okay. No, I'm sorry, man. Scratch on the personal style. This is actually already like a little bit of a well, not treatments, but how people actually like it can like integrate between good or bad, the PTSD or ASD. So it's like several factors, but anyway, yeah, scratch that. Basically anything within almost anything can change the way PTSD or ASD. What is it? How severe it can get. Um, Now, will it? Since it depends on all those variables, doesn't make it an easy experience. Now, with that out of the way, so how do people with PTSD or ASD get treated? Now, obviously, when you think about that, it's treatment. I mean, it's obviously like therapy. But first, one thing that is actually is antidepressant drugs. Now, antidepressant drugs can actually help people with PTSD by kind of lowering down, the stress levels, and kind of try to help them also like with the emotions and their guilt about themselves, and it basically kind of helps them a little bit cheer up if they need that little boost, towards medication wise. And so antidepressant drugs are actually given for that, and from that, that's when also therapy comes into play. So another one is cognitive behavior therapy. Now, again, this is kind of going a little bit specific, but let's just say therapy in general. I'll leave it at that. That way it's not like too technically advanced, or like too specific. I don't want to do that. Let's just say like general therapy. So obviously when it's like a one-on-one session, from there the therapist will kind of help the patient kind of get over the traumatic event. For example, they will actually try to also help them steer away, thinking like, okay, well, you experienced this, well, okay, that's fine, I mean, you've experienced it, but let's try and move on. So they kind of need like those, like, they kind of need like that support and like assistance, kind of move on from those events and try to stop thinking about it frequently, and just recognize that it happened, but up to this point you really can't change much on what it did, since it's already taken place. So that's I mean, it's basically one form of therapy, and that's how people do that. Other types of like common therapies that's not obviously specific that I can't actually talk about is called couple and family therapy. Now, a couple and family therapy is technically only needed when it affects, obviously, the significant other, or the family members, because obviously people with PTSD or ASD do tend to have several, unfortunate, social aspects regarding that. They need help. They need some support, from the family members and from the significant others. So that's probably why. So that's why they kind of go to therapy together, so that way they can get over the issues that they are having as a family, and try to basically bring closeness once again to each other, and understand that what, the family, nothing will happen, and nothing will ever change that, nothing will ever break up this relationship with this person, just because of the trauma or stress that they did, you know you know what is it that they experienced by, sorry. So another one, so I guess another thing is called group therapy. So yes, group therapy, just by the name, this is kind of like also, I guess, popular among like substance abuse and drug addictions. But again, I'm not gonna talk about those until when the time comes, because the chapter has not even came yet. But basically, group therapy is like sessions where people of the similar situations go to, and they kind of help each other out. Kind of like sharing their experiences. Sharing their own traumatic. You know, experiences, and from there they kind of like they can relate to another, and they can like kind of see how they can overcome their PTSD or ASD together. And because I mean, yeah, they really are not alone. Group therapy, that's what it's meant for, to kind of help each other out, and know that they all have some support within each other. And it's not. I guess what's good is that not. It's not. From what I know, it's not basically not even like a counselor is present or like a therapist is present. So it's just them, and they can actually be truthfully honest if they desire to. but yeah, that is another one. So another, I think one last one. So basically, wait, no, well, it's kind of still like kind of with this therapy. Because it's like stress. It's called stress debriefing, but with that, I mean, it's the same thing. You kind of just, it's like a almost like a hotline, you can say, and they kind of help you out in terms of, like quickly trying to get you to calm down if if you're having like a traumatic episode, or any type of negative emotions. But then that's kind of what they kind of like suggest. Okay, well, you need, we suggest that you may want to see a therapist, or you may want to be considering taking a medication for that. But again, it's more like this was popular back then, but I don't believe it's actually now, but it's still an option from what it looks like. And yeah, it's just like another like type of therapy option that people can have if they really do need it. And from there, they can seek for the treatment, when available. But okay, I'm actually gonna take a quick break, everyone, and because I only have, give me 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm gonna take a quick break. Because I do believe there's only, if I'm honestly, I think there's only 2 disorders left in this chapter, and these ones are going to be kind of interesting. So yeah, this is actually going to be interesting. But first, I'm going to take a break, and I'll be right back. Okay, I think I am back. Want to make sure. Hello. Okay, I think I am back. Okay, so yeah, I'm back. Okay. So yeah, so sorry everyone. I'm back. Just need to take a quick break. Anyway, so yeah, so while I was left off, so I still have two more disorders to kind of go over. Now with these, they are actually a bit different. They are not caused from stress. But these are actually kind of more from traumatic experiences themselves. Or, I mean, it could probably be a little bit of stress, but it's more about the traumatic experiences. So, because these people, again, people with PTSD or ASD, they tend to, like I mentioned, they tend to dissociate against from reality, or they tend to like be on their own. They tend to not have it. They don't have like a sense of personality anymore, which they don't like almost feel like they're not functional enough to do well in society. So what happens with that is that from the dissociation, um, that can actually develop on its own disorders. So while yes, you can get PTSD and ASD, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, not only can it can also develop into other disorders, and one of them is dissociative disorders. Um, so one of the types of dissociative disorders is called dissociative amnesia. Now, because of dissociative amnesia, they tend to kind of forget the like the events that happened took place during the traumatic event. And with that is because I mean again they try to kind of like forget, but then because of that experience they tend to obviously they can't recall of what is what happened. And there's actually there's different types of there's different types of amnesias. And one of them, for example, is called selective amnesia. So basically, selective amnesia is where they kind of forget certain events of the traumatic uh, event when it took place, but they can actually determine where they got it from. For example, I mean, again, when you think of like a veteran who is in battle, um, when they have amnesia or the I'm sorry, the selective amnesia, um, that is where they can recall some parts of the traumatic experience, but they can't recall all. So, and yeah, they tend to kind of while they can remember like what happened before and what happened with like some events like doing, but they can't remember like much of the details of the event itself. But they do have some memory of it. Now, for people, there's another one. It's called localized amnesia, and with that, they completely forget they completely almost forget the entire traumatic experience. For an example, um, yeah, and basically what that is that they can remember things that happened up to the event, and they can remember what happened after the event, but they cannot recall if little if not completely nothing at all when the what happened during the traumatic event. And which it's I mean yeah that can happen with localized amnesia as well. And another and I think there's one more which is called I'm sorry real quick need to double check on that. Oh, it's continuous amnesia. Now the continuous amnesia, that's kind of the most, you can say, severest ones. And the reason why it's that is because they tend to not only forget like what happened during the event, but they tend to kind of forget what happened after it and up to the current point of time. And that, I mean, that's a little bit more dangerous now for people who actually experience that, it does tend to kind of go away on its own. However, it is something that still is a concern because they can't remember during that whole time. And obviously the health and the safety is important to kind of maintain, and because people with amnesia in general, they don't know what to do. Um, but anyway, so yeah, so that is dissociative amnesia. And the thing is with dissociative amnesia, it can actually give these like false memories. And within these false memories is like things that people believe that happened, but it never really happened. Say for an example, and actually kind of watched this in one of the videos that was required for this chapter. And although this is kind of like a normal everyday people, if I'm not mistaken, that were actually like given research on. Um, like imagine you were shown like a hot air balloon, like just by itself. Would you? I mean, obviously you would be able to tell right away if you've ever been in a hot air balloon or not. But then, what if like within a couple, if I'm mistaken, I think it was days or weeks later, they show you a picture of a hot air balloon, but they show you the same picture, but you were actually in there. Now, would you actually believe that? Well, that's where false memories would actually come into play. If people do say that yes, that is me, because if they remember it if they see the picture and it seems to them that they've actually did it, that is a false memory right there. Because again, it's kind of like I guess manipulating the mind to think that yes, we did it, but no, we never been in a hot air balloon before. So that is like an example that a false memory. And yeah, people with amnesia can also develop those false memories. And that's actually how again the health comes important, because well, not health but more like the generalization as as a person. They tend to wonder, okay, did this really happen, and how does it did it really, like, how did it affect me afterwards? And again, it tends to make these false memories towards the brain if it is that severe enough, which actually kind of goes into the last what is a dissociative disorder, which is called dissociative, yes, dissociative identity disorder, or DID. I guess like did, but no, like yeah, dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personalities disorder, but it kind of makes sense why they changed the name, because I mean, yeah, it's not really you having multiple personalities. It's just you kind of, not you in general, but the people who have it kind of just makes those false, um, because of the dissociativeness within the community, and like the environments, and they tend to develop false identities, in other words. Now, dissociative identity disorder is kind of interesting, and believe me, when I kind of explain it, it will seem a bit weird. And that's why I kind of like mentioned it in the social media. If like this is the one that actually kind of, I guess, like is a little bit like not spooky, but a little bit I guess weird, you can say, because it really is like kind of a, an interesting one that that people can develop, yet like it seems so real, and in a way the body shows that it's real, but um, it's kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah, that's the one I was talking about. But so dissociative identity disorder is where people can generally have multiple identities of themselves. Now, what I mean by that is, take for an example, there was actually a girl who actually went by the name of, I believe, what was her name? I think I have her right here. Okay, okay, the names, yeah, there was a woman who actually had, well, three main identity disorders, which is Eve. Um, now, I'm not gonna like completely use for example. Let's say there's a person that's named Eve. Well, they actually have so many different identities. The three main ones would probably be like one may be like so happy, so energetic, so so peppy. But then there's another like Eve that like there's another Eve that is like quiet, shy, settle down. They just like are calm. Don't have any. I'm not saying, well, no, don't have like any energy, but just they happen to be, what is it? Just like a little bit more calmer than like the first Eve. Now imagine a third Eve. Excuse me. Now imagine a third Eve that tend to that is actually like angry. That she's always hostile. She always is always just doesn't want to agree with anyone, and she thinks that she's the best, or all that that kind of identity. Now all those three identities, the happiness, the shine, the happy one, the happy Eve, the quiet Eve, and the I guess arrogant Eve, all from one person, but yet in their eyes they are all different personalities. Now that is actually again one interesting one, because it's basically called sub personalities. And because sure, there is like one main personality that they use, but they tend to still kind of relate towards these other personalities, because it's just them that they feel that they need to. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe I wonder if it goes over this here, because I'm not too sure how common. No, I guess no. It's because I know there's one where they kind of like talk about like what is the difference. State of self-hypnosis. No, it's about treatments right there. No, it's already treatments. I know there's another one though where it talks about how each personality disorder is different. Psychological responses, abilities, and references. I'm not sure how it goes through there. I don't want to like look too down and not look at you all in the first place, but okay, I think okay. Oh yes, okay. Now I know how they do it. Okay, so basically, and I apologize for that, but so basically with these types of personalities, how do they interact with each other? Well, surprisingly, they do have their own type of relationships. Now it depends on the person itself in terms of like what they I guess feel like they would work best, but there is I believe there is three I believe it's three different types of I'm sorry, I'm trying to also double check because I don't want to give you all like false information either. Yeah, three types of relationship. So okay, so yeah, so then so basically so there's mutual amnesic relationships. Now the reason now if you can put if you connect the words together, basically it means that the three personality like I'm just saying three for an example, but there could be more personalities than just three. But yeah, there could be three. Basically with mutual amnesic um, relationship, they tend to they really don't know that they are different from one another, or they don't like even identify themselves as, like together. They're basically thinking of themselves as one individual person without any interaction of whatsoever between them. For an example, Eve, again, for an example, Eve can portray, the happy, peppy, upbeat person. But then, when someone wants to talk to, like, if she feels like if she wants to, change her personality, she will, but she won't technically remember that, she was this happy, peppy girl. So again, they tend to kind of not be, they won't have any insight on that who they are individually, and they basically won't have like any connection towards each other, and they will act as an own individual person. Now another type is one-way amnesic relationships, which is actually the most common one. So let me see. Okay, so yeah, so basically that is kind of like where they wait, sorry, actually, hold on real quick. Okay, basically, so wait, what was I talking about? Oh yes, one-way amnesic relationships. That is where they understand that they do have different, and which is again the most common, is that they do have different sub personalities. However, they are not aware of they are not aware of like together. Like they understand they have multiple personalities, but they are unaware of you know who is who, like who is which and who's what, or who's active and who's not. they do know they're there, but they are just not aware of, okay, who is, talking at this place on point of time. And again, that is the most common one. And then another one that is actually the so basically reach the actions. Okay, no, I'm sorry, just trying to make sure again. Okay, so yeah, so the last one is called conscious relationships. I believe that's what it's called. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Conscious subpersonalities or quiet observers. So this type of relationship is where they both, well they are aware of, but they're kind of like are actively listening towards the one who's basically in control of, you know, the person, within the moment. So for example, if Eve is talking, yeah, if she talks, the happy one, the happy go-to one, well, the quiet and the arrogant Eve will be also, what is it? They'll be listening to what she says, um, and yeah, they'll basically listen in on what she's talking about, but they still don't interact with each other. If I'm correct, yeah, they don't interact with each other. So yeah, so basically, so most dissociative identity disorders do most of them have like two or three subpersonalities. However, again, there can be more. Some, like for example, I think the actual like Eve example that I talked about, she had over 17 subpersonalities, and from there, I think there was one that was where she was like almost a teacher. There was one where she, couldn't what is it? I believe that there was one where she was like smart. There was one where she was, I think, even a baby almost, for instance. And I mean, yeah, there's so many, like, she actually did have so many sub personalities, but her main ones were the three ones, not the ones I described since they were examples, but there were three main sub personalities that she did frequently use. Now, so how do they all differ? Um, so basically, so how does each sub personality differentiate with each one another if it technically is the same person? Well, they tend to kind of have different like identifying features. For example, they can lie about their age. They can lie about the height. Well, no, not the height, but well, actually, I think that is possible. Well, no, actually, no, I take that back. No, it's not. They can have like on different on the gender, the race, their family history. Where they came from. The past. Basically the history in general. The lifestyle, actually, even how what they do. Although I think it's a little bit ahead. But yeah, I mean, they can have just from those like identifying factors, each personality. That's how they kind of differentiate. Now, abilities and preferences. So this one is actually um, this one's an interesting one. Well, not listen. That's not the most interesting one, but abilities. So basically, for example, of what they can do. Now, for example, take for example on Eve, the whole personality was of that of, I believe, a 1 year old. So, um, I mean, obviously, how 1 year olds will act. That's kind of how she interacted when that personality came into play. And then there was some that were they couldn't drive. I think there was some, but then in general, yeah, they tend to have like their own, abilities and what is it, preferences, towards their own liking. For example, one may like, and I mean, I'm just again saying this as an example. One may like pizza, and then another one will like just like hamburgers, or some will just like to listen to what is it, like country music, but another one will listen to pop. Again, just examples, preferences, and all that stuff. But um, that's another way to kind of differentiate between each subpersonality. And now, this next one, this is the one who I'm actually like really shocked to kind of like even learn about. And not only can they even like change their own what is it, like the like history, or like the the identifying, and then or even like the preferences, But even the physiological factors can even differentiate between that. Now, just bear with me on that one, because that is where it's like, like for example, the blood pressures. Each subpersonality can have their own different blood pressures. And I know that may sound crazy, but it is possible, surprisingly. Um, how is that possible? I don't know. Um, I don't know. I really don't know how that's even possible. Probably. Even though like the brain stimulus, the brain activity, can even differentiate between each personality. So it's which I can understand probably the brain activity, because it kind of still deals with psychological. So when those kind of differentiate, obviously the brain activity will be a little bit different as well. Although again, the blood pressure, that is what I'm like, wow, I've never really thought of that. Uh, I never really sorry about that. Okay, no mind. Yeah, I never really was like aware of that, blood pressure. So I just wonder like what other like physiological factors can change, can it change like even like for example like the reproductive organs? Or and what I mean by that is like for example, can they actually control like the periods? If the subpersonality is a female, I don't know. But again, that's actually a little bit freaky, a little bit freaky to kind of think about. Just even the subpersonalities, being able to change, the actual the own like body itself functions, and how it basically works in everyday life. So that's a real surprising one to think about. But yeah, that was something that actually really shocked me. I even laughed at that when I first learned about it. I was like, what? How's that even possible? But I guess it is. It doesn't really go into too detail on that in this in the textbook. But it's possible. I'm guessing it is possible from that. So, how common is dissociative identity disorder? The thing is with those, some people say that it's rare, but then some can say that it is, not rare. And the reason why it says that is because, like, for example, you kind of, people will try to act, like, in general, people try to have, like, different ways of, I guess, presenting themselves with other people. For example, let's say you're at work. Obviously, when you're at work, you're gonna act professionalism. You're gonna, talk, politely, respectively. Well, not respectively, but you're just gonna try and put on like that business face on. Now, if you're with your friends, you know, I think you kind of get like where I'm going at with this, but like when you're with your friends, you use abbreviations like LOL. You kind of use slang. You kind of maybe even swear at them. Use language. But that's not really much what identity disorder is, because you kind of um, yeah, you're not presenting yourself as a new identity. You're just kind of presenting yourself the way you want to in different environments or settings. But people with dissociative identity disorder, they tend to do it. They tend to change their own personality, like I mentioned, um, anytime, anywhere of the day. So that's where they tend to develop that dissociative identity disorder. So how is it common? It's not really that common. Um, Probably like back in the late 1900s, it was actually starting to become popular, but then like up to recently now, it's kind of already like subdued. But it really is kind of rare for it to even develop, as there's not even really much of like how many people actually develop it. But there is, obviously there is some that do. Anyway, so yeah, that is what that's how common it can be. Now, the only way, how do people actually, um, you know, how do people actually, develop these dissociative identity disorders is a bit, tricky. While this has been, some research, not that many, we still, apparently researchers don't know how, like that, not too well on it, from, but they do know somewhat. For example, you can actually feel like one thing is that I'm sorry, just trying to make sure I'm reading about that. So basically, is like one way is like how like from past experiences, and with past experiences, we kind of people with dissociative identity disorder, they tend to kind of overshadow those past experiences, and they just try to forget that. They try to you know change the way of how they are towards from that experience. So they kind of they kind of like take that experience and change another personality to form a new one. um, and they always just try to make it happen, just to kind of not forget, but kind of just to move on from that in their own minds, of that. So another one is actually by state. So another one is actually how people can also develop it. Aside from trauma and stress, is from like learning it, because obviously we can learn different personalities. So some people may actually try and hide that perspective towards or they try to learn other personalities, and they kind of use it towards everyday use. And they can be aware of of who, even though they may be aware of who they are, the more that they kind of interact with the learning, learning new behaviors and learning new personalities, it tends to stick with them that way. And from that, well, that's where they develop the dissociative identity disorder, because they kind of lost of who they really are truly, by learning those other personalities through all that stuff. Now another interesting one is actually self hypnosis. Now I guess it's also kind of, I guess, like kind of like learning, learning, a learning how is it? I'm sorry, how to learn these different personalities. But people who, believe it or not, use self hypnosis to kind of again get away from any traumatic experience or event, and they tend to try and be something that they really are not. But when they self hypnotize them, they kind of tend to basically become another person, from their own personality, from a different personality perspective. So yeah, even self hypnosis is one way to kind of develop it. Although that one is kind of like the most, what is it? It's kind of the most least cause why it can happen. Sorry. Anyway, um, so how are these disorders treated? Now, again, the only problem with this though is it's gonna be complicated. Unlike PTSD and ASD, well, I guess like any other type of medical psychological condition, they aren't aware of it. They are aware of it. However, with what is it? PT. I'm sorry. Sorry, I just need to check something. I don't think. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I'm just trying to. It's because I need to make sure I'm not missing any messages. Because I'm supposed to get a call back, I think some this afternoon, but I think I still have some time. Anyway, so yeah, so people with dissociative identity disorders, they tend to not realize that it is like a problem. Um, that, or they just try to shadow it. So to kind of like treat that, it's kind of hard, because excuse me, they first need to realize that it is a problem that they have, or it is something that they need to come realize. And especially with amnesic relationships between each personality, that is where some may not even realize that that they have this disorder, because of the different personalities that they have. So so basically, in order for them to treat it, it's kind of just basically self-realizing it. So basically recognizing it. And I mean, like, that's like what I mentioned, they have to recognize the disorder, and they need to kind of tend to help the person recognize that, okay, you really have, you kind of have this, disorder. It's kind of where, you have multiple personalities, and things like that. They have to help them realize that, what, this is, you have multiple personalities, and you need to, recognize that, and try and fix that, in one way or another. So so basically, in order for them to kind of, help people with, also is getting the person, is kind of even like getting the memories back. Because I mean, again, with people with dissociative identity disorder, they need to, also recognize them, to kind of treat it. They need to recognize the memories that they lost from each, personality, and from there they can probably understand why this happened in the first place. And from there, they can obviously try and, you know, try and develop, or try to figure out a way how to bring, the personalities together. Now, this kind of goes into the next one, which is kind of like merging the different personalities together. Now, with that, it is it's kind of, I'm not gonna say it's hard, but it is kind of a bit difficult, because for people who kind of like recognize, like, I mean, for the if an individual recognizes the different personalities, and they try to like fuse, like, put all in one, personality itself, it can think like, many because they feel like the personalities may seem like, putting them all together is kind of a result of death, or like dying, because what, they're kind of like replacing, it's like they'll feel like it's kind of replacing, what is it, their own perspective, their own personality, and they won't be alive anymore. But again, that's another way to kind of think into it. So again, it's kind of like a bit long treatment process to kind of even cure that. But again, and again, this is like, again, I guess the most freaky part. This is all from one actual person. Um, and yeah, this one person will believe that they have different personality disorders, and it really is an interesting, thing to think about, because it's like, wow, how can you have multiple personalities? It really is um, an interesting, thing to look into or think about. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's all from one person, and they it and for people who have those disorders, it really is, it will be like a tough, it'll take a while for it to even be fully, or if at least somewhat, even treated. But yeah, that's dissociative identity disorder. Again, it's actually one of the most freakiest ones out of there. Now, there is one more disorder. It's not that. It's actually not even that long. It's like actually real short. Which, I mean, I can probably summarize it up. Which is depersonalization derealization disorder. Well, I guess like DDD. I guess like King DDD, from Nintendo. No. But yeah, DDD. I'll keep it like that. Is basically kind of like what people experience, like out of body experiences. Um, now this is kind of like, again, from like trauma. Like, for example, people who, and I'm pretty sure you all have heard of this, like people having like near death experiences, or like out of body experiences. That's kind of what DDD is, which again, it's depersonalization derealization disorder. But yeah, that's kind of what it is for the most part. It is only, it's kind of having out body experiences. Now, this one is kind of the most rarest one to even describe, because a lot of people don't know what causes it, or what, or why, people go through it, since it's still kind of fairly recent that people are starting to research about that disorder. But I mean, yeah. So I mean, when you have, I mean, out of body experiences, when you hear about that, that's kind of what they have. They tend to like see their own body, from above. They may seem like, that they're, just watching over them, and it's like, wow, what's going on, um, but yeah, that's what DDD is. And if you've seen, those out of body experiences or near death experience, that is what it is. But again, that's all I can explain about on that one, since it's kind of, you know, again, it's already not even that talked about that much in here. Um, and you know, it just talks about, you know, what it is, which I kind of just basically summarize it up right now, and all that good stuff. But I do believe that is actually about it for the stress chapter. Um, so yeah, so that was it for this chapter for this week. Hopefully, you know, you all enjoyed it. This week it's actually again an interesting one. Overall, I will say the chapter was kind of divided into differently into than like the past. You know, which was the anxiety chapter. But you know, I'm guessing like each one may be categorized in different ways that, you know, because yeah, each, you know, condition is different. But you know, I found it to be like really interesting. You know, I liked it. I really did enjoy it. Learning about different kinds of stress. You know, and I mean, again, everyone faces stress. You know, I mean, if you're in school, if you're at work, if you have like basically if you have responsibilities in general, that's stress. But I mean, yeah, I mean, again, for people who have stress in general, or who, and if you add, you know, traumatic experience on top of that, it can happen. It can have any of those, you know, conditions can happen. Um, which again is unfortunate, but you know, that's where you kind of like, I mean, try to, you know, um, not let stress overtake you, and that is where um, I guess like what stress management comes into play to avoid those type of, you know, conditions from happening in the first place. But anyway, so I do believe that is about it for that chapter. Hopefully you all liked it. I personally again enjoyed it. Next week will be eating disorders, but again, since I will be mainly focusing on studying and what is it? Studying and testing for, yeah, studying and testing basically for these next week, 2 weeks. Definitely next week the psychology video will be delayed until the following week, and I'll do 2 videos to kind of catch up on that. But I mean, I do believe that is about it, everyone. Yeah, if you liked it, you know, I do appreciate, you know, you leaving a like button down there. And yeah, if you're enjoying these, you know, psychology videos, you know, do let me know. I would like some feedback. Because again, I know I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm not professional anyway, but that's why I kind of like use the book, because I still need to, like, you know, remember some stuff, and you know, um, but you know, I do try to understand as much as I can. To kind of, you know, describe to you all, and that's why I kind of still use the book to kind of make sure I get the right information for you all in general. But I'm really enjoying these talks with you all in terms of like to learning different kinds of, you know, abnormal psychology disorders. And believe me, after I do my exam, which is what no, basically after um, eating disorders, if I'm not mistaken, I think the next series of chapters will be probably the most, I guess you can say, the darkest in terms of mental health disorders. But again, I'll probably, I don't know, maybe I'll make like a quick message or something like that, because it is going to be a little bit more darker. After, I'm not saying like not these past disorders or mental health conditions are not important, but you know, it's good to at least leave that out there, you know, because yeah, it's gonna be kind of, you know, it's gonna lead up into, because it's gonna start off with depression, and I mean, I'll talk about like real quick, right? It's gonna start off with depression, and it's gonna kind of like end up all the way up to suicide. Now again, that is where it's gonna be the most, you know, I guess unfortunate, you know, type of the chapter will be the most, I guess, most interesting to talk about, and you know, most, I guess you can say, serious, because I mean, yeah, you know, suicide, that's where it's like life, you know, death, um, within a person. But again, I mean, we'll worry about that when that time comes, which it probably won't happen until I think 3 more weeks from now. But yeah, but anyway, for now, don't want to get too ahead of myself. But hopefully, y'all liked this week's Abnormal Psychology video. If you did, definitely hit the like button down below and comment. You know, do you face, and I guess I'll leave y'all with the question as well. Have y'all ever faced, like, what is your, I guess, number one stress trigger? Like, you know, is it work? Is it school? Or is it like, you know, other responsibilities? I mean, you don't have to be specific, but in general, like, is it school, is it work, just be, if you want to be general, that's fine. Just to kind of want to start like a little discussion if you all are interested in that. But yeah, do let me know, in the comments below if you all liking it, and also, an answer to that question if you like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I would appreciate it. Again, I love doing these. I love talking with you all. I love, playing games as well. So, which in fact, do look out for tonight's live stream gameplay on Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. I was gonna do another game, which I'll explain when I get the when I do the second live stream later today. But yeah, hopefully y'all will stop by and enjoy that gaming stream. I do look forward to it since it is kind of like a Halloween theme. It's October, so perfect time. But yeah, so if you want like also any other updates, do follow my social media. Links on in the description. And again, if you all are interested, feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you all follow my journey into nursing school, learning more about abnormal psychology, just having fun game streams, all that good stuff. Yeah, I do look, if you all want to continue that, do follow me, and consider subscribing, and I do appreciate every single one of you that follows the channel. But yeah, so hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Again, I'll see y'all later, and if you don't come, then I'll hopefully y'all have a good weekend, and I'll catch you all in the next live stream. Bye guys.